Today is a big day for Curious Notes. Not only am I doing my first ever interview on this channel, but I am joined by none other than Joseph Milligan of the band Anberlin. It's so great to see you here. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. It's incredibly hot in Florida right now.
So Anberlin have been going since 2002. This year they're actually celebrating the 20th anniversary of their second album, Nevertake Friendship Personal, and you guys are celebrating it in a really interesting way, having re-recorded the whole album with your new touring singer, Matty Mullins. Joey, would you mind telling me a little bit about what that process was like?
Well, it was something we kind of popped back and forth to each other a handful of times, and we thought like this could go one of two ways. People could be either super on board with this or like really, come back at us about it. And
Yeah, because that's a really popular album, isn't it? And I feel like
yeah,
that one for you was a bit of a breakthrough for the band. And
it
I
really
imagine
was.
it's
Yeah.
one that, especially after 20 years, it's one the fans probably hold quite closely.
We were definitely nervous, and we knew it was going to be great. Like Maddie is fantastic, and this whole thing since it started with Steven stepping away and Maddie stepping in, um, we framed it initially as Maddie is going to be our touring singer, you know, um, and we're going to continue to do things with Steven, and we really didn't. It was a bit irresponsible to frame it that way because we didn't know what was going to happen. Um, it was a learning kind of experience for all of us. We really weren't sure if and when Stephen was going to be available. We weren't sure like when we were going to record again. We had really no idea what was happening. We were playing it all by ear. We had the best of intentions as far as the information that we put out. Um, but we did these meet and greets during the 20-year anniversary tour, and we had fans ask us about it. Like, is Maddie the singer or is Maddie the touring singer? And the way that we kind of had to put it to people was, in order for this band to exist and continue to exist, we have to proceed as if this is who we are now. We can't, you know, abide by all of these rules and all of these kind of self-imposed, limitations if we want to continue making music and continue touring. Um, it seems almost silly to, you know, well, we're waiting on, we're going to do a record with Steven coming up and we'll see how he goes. And then Maddie will learn everything and then we'll like actually get on tour. That seems kind of silly. Like, Steven is living his life. He's doing what he needs to do. We're doing what we need to do. Like we're good. Like people also tend to kind of think that we're like at odds with each other, and we're absolutely not. Like he's very happy. We're very happy, and um, we also owed it to Maddie. Like he's put in so much work and he's been such a great guy to be around and such a positive force for us. And we were like, well, if we're going to be doing this 20-year tour, like it seems like it could be kind of beneficial to do that for people to know kind of what to expect. Like if they hear the record with Maddie singing, they know what they're coming to see. You know, and and at the end of the day, it was fun. It was fun to re-record all those songs. It was fun for Maddie to get to sing all the songs, and we just had a blast doing the whole thing. Steven was obviously aware of the entire thing and was totally fine, totally on board. So I guess like message to the fans was everything is fine. You know.
Yes, and I was actually thinking about this. I was watching something where you were talking a little bit about re-recording the album, and it got me thinking about if you guys were all still in your teens or your 20s, there probably would be that sort of that feeling of betrayal or something like that. Like Stephen being like, ah,
Right.
screw you guys or whatever. Whereas I feel like now you guys have been a band for so long, and I feel like there is a professionalism there as well. And to me, it came across like this whole situation between Stephen and Matty felt very amicable.
Yeah. And, Stephen handpicked Matty. Um, they speak to each other. It's, like, I think in the absence of information, people come up with their own stories. And, we do our best to fill in the gaps and give everyone the information, but you can't reach everyone with social media.
Re-recording this album, Matty was very much kind of like it's already different enough with the new singer, and you guys need to kind of instrumentally kind of keep it how it is and really respect the material. Um, so I guess I've got a twofold question here. One is, what was this experience like compared to when you first recorded it 20 years ago? And two, was there anything you kind of wanted to change, and it's sort of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't?
Well, speaking to what you mentioned earlier, like when you're in your early 20s,
Hmm.
as we were when we made the record, you're far more volatile. You're far more emotional, and you don't know each other as well. Even it doesn't matter as long as you've known each other. It doesn't matter. Like you're still going to react a little more, you know, with a little more urgency than you would, later in life.
Hmm.
And when we did Blueprints, we flew from Florida to Seattle, and it was our first time, on in the Pacific Northwest. Culture shock from hell. We were from a small town in Florida, and we were kind of the odd ones out in Florida. Like, for lack of a better term, we came from a very like provincial, like southern town, and the place where we went was a very liberal, like kind of everybody is just kind of doing whatever kind of thing. And it felt very freeing. It felt very like, oh man, this is great. Like everybody's into like music and culture and food, and like this is great, And we had our songs going into that record. We weren't on tour. We could focus in on every single thing we were doing, and our minds were solely on making that record. Now, fast forward to when we were doing Friendship, I think we literally got dropped off at the studio by the tour bus. Like we were coming off of constant touring. Um, you know, there were some songs that like, I at that point back then, I would demo everything at home, and I would like give everyone the demos, and like they would write to it from there. I think we practiced a handful of times just to play the songs together, but like we were on tour all the time. So there really wasn't time to like just sit in a room and like jam songs out and stuff. And that's really not ever been our style anyway. Um, so we get in the studio and we were like, oh, like, we're off tour. And, but now you're in an even higher pressure situation,
Hmm.
like, um, so I think we didn't take it seriously enough when we initially walked in the door. And
Okay.
then it kind of slapped us in the face, like maybe the second day. And we realized that, like, we weren't as prepared as we probably should have been. Um, and honestly, I don't even know. Maybe as we could have been. I don't know that we could have been more prepared going in.
Yeah, I feel like if you're on tour and everything, I mean, I think you do get occasionally you get bands that are in the green room or whatever, and they're just jamming away. But I can sympathize with that. If you're on tour, you're focused on being on tour and giving a good show, and especially if it's the start of the band, you're hungry and you just want to, blow people's socks off at the gigs.
Well, we had one or two, of the songs from the record that we were playing live in their original form, but like those were fine, but like you're talking about 11 songs, like and I think we tracked like 13, um, and we just weren't ready. And then when we got in there and we got down to it, it was like I didn't have everything totally figured out. Dion, Nate, and we were only four of us in the band at that time. We didn't have a second guitar player at the time.
Oh, wow. So all of those guitar parts on, well, presumably the first two albums at least, you're playing all the guitar parts.
The first three, yeah,
First three.
yeah. It was scheduling stuff with Strayer with the third album, but yeah, the first three records I played all the guitar
Wow.
stuff. We were living together, obviously, while we were doing it, and uh, I mean, we were fighting, arguing, like just at each other, slamming doors in each other's
Oh, wow.
faces, and it was, I think, honestly, the hardest record we've ever had to make. Um, but we got through it,
Mm.
and it turned out how it turned out. And
I
um,
think now, 20 years later, we can say it turned out all right. And it's got a load of really great songs on it. I feel like it's interesting you saying that um, you were in the studio with basically nothing and you had to kind of come up with it then. It's almost like you had this really spontaneous experience. And clearly the creative juices were flowing because you made a good record out of it. I
for
think,
quite a bit of it, yeah, there
yeah,
was. I mean, everything was there. All the songs were there. There were, I think, Paper Thin Hymn, I think, was actually two different songs at the time, and I think we combined the two
okay.
songs, and that's so that checks one off the list. So that now we're down to 13 songs. So
Yeah.
and I think Steven, I think I had told him I was like, dude, I have this in my head like with the chorus. I was like da, 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 over and over, and he was like, I like that, and he went to a coffee shop down the street, and he came back and he had the chorus.
Oh,
Like
nice.
he just wrote everything, at the coffee shop, like an hour before he came in, and like and it worked out. It's those little things like that, that tend to work themselves out. That like, I mean, it's a 1 in a million shot, um, but so doing it the second time was far and away very different. It was very in house. Like, I'm a producer and an engineer, so um, some of the stuff I had prepared here at my place, and we went with our friend JJ, um, and we tracked with him, and that was just in Tampa, so that's right down the street, from all of us, and we just had fun. Like we just all hung out and just like played everything. And Christian, wasn't in the band at the time, and I was just like, "Hey, you want to play this part?" And he's like, "Yeah, okay, cool." And like he'll play that part, and then we're just kind of throwing it around to each other. And then really the only change that happened was with um, the instrumental on the record.
Mm.
Um, and there was a reason behind that. When we were doing the record in 2004, uh, my sister was going through cancer treatment, and
So sorry.
um, I had just gone uh, to see if I was a bone marrow donor candidate for her, and it turned out that myself and my older sister were not. So um, they ended up finding a person in the Midwest United States who actually was a bone marrow match for her, and like it didn't happen, or it didn't work, I should say.
Oh,
Um, and she ended up passing away, and uh, I was kind of dealing with all of that at the time. Yeah, also, coming off a tour, going in, making a record, um,
I was gonna say it's a really heavy time for you then. It's not just you got the
yeah,
we'll say work stuff for like a video, but all that kind of.
yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear about that with your sister. That's
Thank you. I
horrible.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, there was a bar across the street from the studio called the Cha Cha, and we would go there every night after we were done tracking. We'd grab a drink, and then we would head back to our where we were staying. And there was one night in particular when I had found out that I wasn't a match, and I had found out that there was a chance that there was a bone marrow donor that was in the Midwest, but there was like I think they said a 15% chance that it would actually do anything. And so I was particularly down that night,
Mm.
And so I remember we went to the Cha Cha. I got hammered out of my mind. And I remember I went back to the studio, and Zach, who was the engineer there at the time, I asked him, like, I remember bits and pieces of this. He and everyone else kind of filled me in on this afterwards. Um, I told him I wanted a track and like a beat, and that I wanted it to be about like, like God bless him for dealing with that. But I
That's
guess
what
he was
producers are
like,
for, right?
I guess he was intrigued. So he was like, okay, okay. And like, he went and he got a click track going. And I said I wanted to play an acoustic part, but I wanted the mic to be at the other end of the room,
Oh, okay.
which as an engineer now makes very little sense.
I was
You know,
thinking that's different. Yeah.
it's not cool. Actually, if you listen to the track on the original recording, you can hear partway through, you can hear me get way off beat with the acoustic
Oh, really?
guitar. Yeah. But so I recorded the acoustic part, and then I told him I wanted to record two electric guitars, and so I recorded the whole thing that night. I don't have a ton of recollection of it. Um, and the next day when I listened to it, I was like, man, that really caught everything I was feeling at that moment, you know. And Steven was the one that ended up naming it after the Dave Eggers book, the heavy-hearted work of staggering genius, based off of like what I was, already doing, and then based off of actually the book and like I have actually part of the book tattooed on me
Oh,
now.
wow.
But it was one of those things where it was an outlet at the time, and so going back to do that song again this time, I was like, well, I mean, it was kind of happenstance that I went in and did the song the first time. Why don't we really like let it happen this time? And so it was very emotional. It was very fun, for lack of a better term, to like just kind of let everything go with that song. And then on listening back, it was much more the scope of what was being felt when the original one was being recorded.
So we've spoken about Nevertake Friendship Personal and we talked about the recording process of that. I'm a little bit curious. You may have seen on this channel I've covered a lot of like debut eras with bands, and I'm
Hmm.
curious if we go back to Blueprints for the Black Market. Not just that album, but even the formation of the band, and also I'm a little bit curious how you got onto Tooth and Nail Records. Like, did you seek it out, or did they come to you? What happened there?
Um, well, with the band, me, Steven, and Dion, we all grew up in the same town in Winter Haven, Florida, and there was a very small music scene there, like minute, and so kind of everybody knew everybody that were musicians, and I was in a band with this drummer we knew named Sean, who was also the drummer in Dion and Steven's band.
That's so
And
true about local bands with drummers. The
right,
drummer's in about three different bands. Yeah, I
right.
can
So
relate to that.
if you
Yeah,
find one good drummer, like
yeah,
chances are he's in like three
yeah.
bands. So That's how I ended up meeting Stephen and Dion. And then Dion and I, we both knew a guy in our hometown that was kind of a mess. And so he and I kind of bonded over like taking care of that guy. And so then he and I became friends.
Mm.
And, we've been best friends since we were 15. So we're both, I mean, I'm 44, he's 45. So, um, only 30 years. So we, but we used to hang out at this place called Downtown Comics that our friend Matt ran in downtown Winter Haven. And, um, all the musicians kind of went in and out of there because it was the only place that sold like punk CDs and stuff. And so you ended up meeting people that way as well. But like, um, basically Dion was like, my band broke up and Dion was like, well, Steven's brother just quit the band that we're in. He was playing guitar. Like, do you want to come like try out for our band? And I was like, sure. So Dion came over to my house and he showed me a couple of the songs, and they were like super super easy. But like I figured them out, and we went and we did a practice, and it went really well, and we were practicing in the shed behind our drummer's mom's apartment. So it was like it barely fit us in it. And she had a mirror hanging up on the wall. I think mainly for storage. It wasn't to liven up the room. And so I remember like looking down and playing, and I remember looking over at the mirror, not at Steven. And I remember looking at Steven jumping up and down and pointing at me, and I look over at him, and he would just stop. And I was like, okay,
Sort of
I think
keeping you
I
cool,
think
yeah.
I'm in. I think I'm good. And so we started then in 1996.
Wow.
And so Dion, Steven, and I, like, we had that band going. And we had a couple, other members kind of come and go until we got Nate playing drums for us in, I think, 2001. And he was 13 at the time and just crushing. Like, it was unbelievable how good he was at 13. And we we were like, well, we're kind of bored with like what we're doing, this like super fast everything, like technical punk rock stuff. We kind of just want to be in a rock band and just have fun.
Mm.
And so we were like, well, let's like try to write some like rock songs. So I had like a very rough like demoing kind of setup at my house, and the first song I wrote was Ready Fuels, and
Wow.
um, I sent it to the guys. They were into it, and we practiced it, and we went and we got 3 songs together. Um, I think 4 actually. Yeah, 4 songs, and I think. Anyways, we went to um, there was this guy, Matt Goldman, in Atlanta who had, now he's done like Under Oath, Copeland. At the time, he had done like Dennis and Mars. He had done like The Chariot and, all these other bands and stuff. But he was like the guy. Like, if you want to get signed to a record label, you go and you make music with Matt
Right.
Goldman, and then you send that music to the record label. And that was like our thinking. And so we saved up some money and we went and we tracked with Goldman. And when we heard Ready Fuels back for the first time, we were like, this is like a real band. Like, this is like you could hear this on the radio. Like, it felt like little kids talking about music. So we, at the time, we had submitted to, I think we had sent submissions to Tooth and Nail and to I forget the name of the record label. It was Chad Johnson's record label before he was folded into Tooth and Nail. But it was like a hardcore label out of Alabama, and we'd just been kind of denied by them, both by everyone. I think we sent a submission to Fat Records as well, and we got denied by them. And so we were like, well, now we have new songs. Let's try again. So at the time, I think it was mp3.com was like the big thing. And so we uploaded 3 songs to mp3.com. I did my best to put horrible artwork, on every one of the songs. And, um, we ended up, I guess Brandon at Tooth and Nail, Brandon Ebel, he was into it. And so he sent Chad, one of his A&Rs, down to see us play. Now, like, the show he sent Chad to watch us at was the worst possible show that he could send somebody to watch us play. We were playing in Atlanta, and the lineup was us, then Under Oath, then Norma Jean. And it's like, why would you send someone to watch us play before 2 of the most popular like metal bands
Oh
like
wow.
in the area, and ultimately, like, in the country. And you know we all of our no, I shouldn't say all of our my equipment failed. um it was just a complete shit show from top to bottom. And Chad had, contacted us, and he was like, "Yeah, we'll meet up. We'll watch the show, and then we'll go out. I'll take you guys out. We'll go to like Ruth's Chris or like a steakhouse or something." We went to Denny's after the show, and I don't know if you're familiar with Denny's. It is.
I felt like the way you said it kind of told me enough, you know. But yeah, we don't have Denny's in the UK, at least not that
It's
I
a
know.
trash diner. It's basically
Right,
it's where you go at like 3 a.m. for shitty food.
right.
When you're either hungover or like trying to not be hungover, or like you're
We have
just,
our equivalent. Yeah, I know
yeah, or
exactly
like
what
a
you're talking
show
about.
a show just ended or something, and you're just going to get like crappy food and coffee. So instead of a steakhouse, he took us to Denny's, and it was we were like, "There's no way he's signing us. Like, there's literally no way." And
Hmm.
Chad told us later, he's like, he went to Brandon and was like, "They're not ready. Like, they're not there. It's not good." And Brandon was like, "I don't care. I want these songs. Sign them."
Oh wow.
And so we signed with Tooth and Nail, and at that point, it was like the kind of the expectation was set. Like, it was like, this is where you need to be now. You need to get there.
Hmm.
You know, and I feel like we got there. But we were already part of the way there. It was just he came to a horrible show. um, but like, it did take a lot of like, kind of like growing up and a lot of time on the road and a lot of like kind of like just figuring yourself out to like get to that point where you feel comfortable and like everything's a well-oiled machine. Um, and just goes without you thinking about it.
This is a point as well, and I feel like if any band that does, make it or get to a certain point or gets professional, it's overcoming that certain point where it's sort of like, oh, here is the expectation that we need to make. You have that lesson, and I know you've said like that was a bad show, and you guys were above that, but still, I'm sure there were other things you had to figure out along the way,
Yeah.
and I think that separates sort of boys from the men, if you like. It's a terrible way to phrase it, but the men are the ones that are just kind of like see it for what it is and just like, right, I'm going to rise up to that.
Yeah. It's tough, man. Like, there are a lot of bands that you see that you know will garner some attention, and they'll keep doing them, and that's fine a lot of the time. Like, You know, you have plenty of examples of bands that didn't change a thing, you know, from the time they were kind of tapped to, you know, what they became. But then you also have plenty of times where, you know, a label saw something in a band that wasn't quite there yet, and maybe that band needed some time and needed a little bit of work. And, you know, I think at the time we were so young and the songs were so new, you know, we needed that little bit to like kind of marinate before we actually ended up where we were.
It's a fun question actually. Because obviously this would have been the early 2000s. I remember reading a magazine here in the UK where it talks about the early days of Evanescence, and I think they had a similar journey in the sense that they had multiple years to kind of work on material and demos and stuff, and they were kind of like one of the last bands to have that side of the music industry. Whereas I feel like as you get on, obviously streaming becomes more of a thing, the budgets get smaller and smaller, and part of me wonders if that isn't a thing anymore. You know, a record label wants a band to have a big Instagram following or whatever, and aren't willing to put in that time. And it sounds to me like you guys are a great example of a band that needed a little bit of time to become what you are. To,
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it very much was. It was like we needed a little bit of a runway before we, you know, before we could really do it on our own. And that's not to say we needed co-writers or producers or anything like that. We just needed time to play together, you know, in that form. You know, we had been playing together for years as the other band, but like not at not in the way that we were playing together at that point, you know, and especially like the songs we were writing were, you know, we there were a lot of like ambitious songs that we were throwing out there, and I think it took us a minute to grow into that, you know.
that's interesting as well. I feel like sometimes, so yeah, I do a bit of music myself, and sometimes I'll hear something on the radio or on a CD or what, and it's sort of like you have this ambitious idea, and maybe myself as a musician aren't isn't quite there yet, and you just have to hammer it in. And it sounds to me like yeah, maybe at that earliest part of your career, you have these big ideas for songs, and it's like sometimes you've just got to push yourself to actually be able to do it.
I've seen it and done it. Like, you know, it's where you're like, oh man, and what if this came in, and what if this came in, and then you're doing this, and you're doing that, and then what if like all these strings came in, and then what if like,
Yeah,
you know, like, and it's like
yeah. Once the
that's
imagination gets
cool, man.
going,
And then when you're playing live and it's just you and the guys, and you're like, man, this isn't as big as I thought it was going to
right?
be. Like, you know, and then technology allows you to kind of like, you know, fill in those gaps, you know, as you move forward as
Mm.
well. It's more and more acceptable at this point to play with backing tracks, especially with like keyboards and strings and things like that. And it's funny because that stuff was happening forever, but like no one ever really, you know, acknowledged it. They'd be like, "Oh, well, they have a keyboard player on stage," and it's like, "Yeah, but there are like six keyboards playing," you know. And they're like,
Right.
"Oh, well, they have a guitar player on stage." It's like, "Yeah, but there are like six guitars playing," and no one ever like acknowledged those things, you know. But like, it's it's funny now because now it's kind of limitless. It's whatever you want it to be. Like, you know, we'll write within our means to perform live, but like with the backing stuff, it's like do whatever, man. If you want strings, you want strings. If you want keys, you want keys. You know, if you want like timpanis and all kinds of stuff or whatever, we can take care of that. Um, you know, people are concerned about like seeing the band and like, can you play what you're playing live? You know, and like I don't think anyone cares if you don't have six keyboard players on stage or half a symphony on stage. You know.
You're on Wind Up Records for those first three records, and then with New Surrender, you're on Universal, aren't you? So, I, is it fair to say that felt like a big step up now being onto the major label? And I'm curious, how was that different? Was it a different process? Was that another hurdle to overcome?
It was crazy. You know, when we first signed with Tooth and Nail, we first flew up to Seattle and we were doing the record and stuff. The first record. You know, you get to know everybody in the office, and it feels very much like a small pond, and like you're, you know, kind of you feel like you're friends with everybody, and like, everything's cool. And there are certain limitations that come with being a label that size. And I think we reached kind of our max of what we could do with that record label. And so around the time when Cities came out, the week it came out, it debuted, in the top 10 on Billboard, and we were on an independent record label. So that grabbed some eyes, and so one of our first shows on that tour was in New York City, and Universal came out and they wanted to have a meeting because our contract was up. We had signed with Tooth and Nail for 3 records, and we had the option to re-sign with them, but we also had the option to explore what else was out there, And so Universal kind of swooped in immediately. I think we did a meeting with Atlantic, and we did one other kind of talking with, but like Universal was the most serious, and they came out to the New York show, and we hung out with them afterwards, and they seemed super invested in the fact that we had cultivated our own fan base, that we, kind of had already gotten to where we had gotten on our own. That's not to dispel, not to disparage anything that Tooth and Nail had done for us, Um, but on an indie, they were impressed that we were at where we were at on an indie. Um, and then I remember we were on Warped Tour, and we signed the contract with Universal, and it was the same night as the Mustachio Bash show, so we all went out and we were all kind of celebrating and having fun and stuff, and it didn't feel real, to be honest. It was like, oh my god, we're on a major record label. And I remember the first time we went to the Universal offices, and they kind of, they were kind of rolling out the red carpet for us at that point, and um, put us up in like a very nice hotel in New York and stuff. And we went and had a meeting with them, and there's lots of like promises and things like that. And it I can't say it's like it was very much in line with what most people say about major record labels, because I do feel like we had a lot of people there that really cared about us and really did their absolute best for us there. But ultimately, like, it's you're a very small fish in a very, very big pond at that point. And um, we wanted to go back to Aaron Sprinkle, who had done our first 3 records, and they were like, "No, you're going with this person," and which ended up being fine. It was totally fine. Neil Avron was
It's a
an
really good sounding
amazing,
record, to be fair.
amazing producer. He's got a ton of bands under his belt, like with Fall Out Boy, Newfound Glory, Weezer, like just great bands. And he was a great producer, and I learned personally a ton from him. I learned Pro Tools from him, um, and that's literally why I'm engineering and producing now. And we were very. They had a very short timetable for us to get the next record delivered, and we had just finished Cities, and just toured on it.
Yeah, you're right,
And
because it was 2007, and then New Surrender was 2008, wasn't it?
yeah, and we had to write a whole record, and Christian was a new member. So it was like, he had jumped on as a hired guitar player to do the Cities tour. And I think maybe like 5 shows into the Cities tour, we were like, "Hey man, do you want to be in the band?" And he was like, "Yeah." We were like, "Great." Like, and so he's been with us since 2007, but it was a learning curve, like, with writing. You know, he was used to writing with other writers and stuff with Acceptance, and for me, I was used to just writing on my own, and I turn in the songs, and you guys write to them, and then that's that. But this was like we have notes, and so it was. it took some like of me getting over myself, I think. And now it's like a totally big open pot. Like everybody writes for everything now. Um,
Again, I feel
and
like there's another lesson that's been learned here. And again,
yeah,
this boys from the med, it's sort of like letting go of your ego. Like, because I can imagine when you've written, 3 records, the last one was a top 10 record. You're like, oh, I'm pretty good at this songwriting lot,
yeah,
and
you've
then
been told you're great.
and then suddenly you've got someone saying to you like, oh, actually, I don't know, whatever it is, maybe the bridge isn't right or something, and you're like,
Right. Yeah.
hang on, like, and you can't turn around and be like, well, who are you to tell me that? Because it's obviously like,
I'm not going to be
I
a
don't want to say
dick.
they're above you, but you get what I mean. Like you said yourself, like a small fish in a big pond. You sort of these people have legitimacy, I suppose, to say that to you. So
Yeah.
I guess you do just have to accept it and just be like, okay, this is I'm playing a whole new game now, and I've
Well,
got
not
guys up for
not
it.
only do I not have like I say, well, I'm not going to be a dick. I was kind of a dick about it. Like I was actually kind of a dick about it, and but also like this guy also put out a great record with Acceptance. Like, well, it was one of my favorite records with Phantoms, you know. And so, what am I going to tell him? He doesn't know what he's doing, like you know, like. And so it took a little bit of adjusting, and by a little bit of adjusting, I mean like 5 or 6 years um, before like we were like 100% comfortable like writing. You know, like he was always comfortable. I was always uncomfortable. You know, like I can't throw Christian under the bus at all. He was always great. I was always like kind of the dick about it, and I, you know, I look back on that time and I'm like, man, yeah, I learned quite a bit back then as far as like how to be a team member, like how to be like a part of a whole, um, as opposed to just like being concerned with me and myself and what people thought of me, Um, so we got through it. We got through that record. It's still my least favorite record we've ever done, ever. I really don't like a lot of the songs on that record, and we did this a few years back. We did these residencies where we would fly to a city and we would do 3 shows in a row, and each night we would do one record front to back. And while we were doing it, we were doing the first night we did, I think, Friendship. The next night we did Cities. And then the next night we did New Surrender. And the third show was always our least favorite. Like, it was always like, I gotta play these songs. Like, I gotta remember all this stuff. Like, because we really don't play almost any of those songs live. Like, we play Resistance all the time.
Yeah,
Um,
that's definitely a highlight, I must say.
we've played Breaking quite a bit. We have. We haven't in a long time. And obviously Feel Good Drag, but that doesn't really count. um,
Hmm. Oh, do you mind if I jump
that's
in
on.
actually? Yeah, Feel Good Drag. I'm curious what sort of persuaded you or what inspired you to re-record that song.
Well, so at the time, like when we did Friendship, there were 2 songs that were incomplete when our time was up in the studio. It was Audrey Start the Revolution and Feel Good Drag. Ironically, Feel Good Drag was the first song that I wrote when I got home when we did Blueprints. But it was the last song recorded for Nevertake Friendship Personal. Steven just hadn't gotten around to it, there was just a lot going on. And so Steven had to fly back to Seattle, I think a couple of weeks after we were done with recording to record vocals for Audrey and Feel Good. And so we had actually never heard either of those songs with vocals when we got them back for the first time. Um, and the first time we heard it, we were like, man, this song is like, it's like really good.
Hmm.
And then, we put it like number 8 on the record, and then we never think about it again. Like we didn't play it live. We had people that were fans that liked the song, but like no one was really clamoring for us to play it live. So, as time went on, we kind of saw it as like maybe one of these songs that kind of got maybe like underutilized and kind of got swept under the rug a little bit. So when we were doing New Surrender, we were like, why don't we re-record it as a B-side? So when we release our single, we can put that one along with it, and people will be like, oh, it's one of their old songs, and they re-recorded it. And then when we recorded it and Universal heard it, they were like, no, this is the single. And we were like, oh, the B-side? And they were like, yeah, like this is your single. And we are like, oh, okay.
So there wasn't really anyone telling you that, oh, this is a great song, you should redo it or something. You felt like it was unfinished in a way. Oh, we'll do it as a B-side or as a little extra. And then the label were like, no, this has single potential. Put it
Yeah,
out.
we were like, oh, okay. Like, I guess, like, we thought there were other songs on the record that would, potentially be singles, and Universal was just like hyper focused on that one song, and we were like, okay, I guess. And I guess they were right. So,
I
whatever.
dare say they were right, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't really complain. So,
Although
yeah,
again, I suppose it's a testament to we spoke earlier about friendship and the creative juices were just all firing on that record, and the fact that you've got track 8 on the album and then you re-record it and Universal like it, and it's like, man, what was I smoking? Or you know what I mean? Like, what was I doing
yeah,
back then
oh,
that really
absolutely.
got that? There was obviously something with that time period when you did the second album.
Well, we thought about it like while we were doing, re-recording Friendship. We were like, there were a few songs that we hit, and we are like, man, why didn't we push this song? Like, man, why didn't we push this song? Like, and yeah. So it's hindsight's 2020. So
Mm.
and also it depends on like the time frame, like the era that we did it in, the resources that we had or didn't have. Um, so it's all there's always going to be some reason why you didn't do. At least I hope there's always going to be some reason why you didn't do what you didn't do.
I really appreciate how open you've been about New Surrender and saying it's your least favorite record. Because how do I put? I feel like sometimes as an artist you might want to keep certain cards close to your chest, but as you've disclosed your least favorite, which one's your favorite album that you've recorded?
Ooh, that's actually harder.
Okay.
Um, I think the majority of the band would say Cities, um, and I said Cities for a long time. And then it was Vital, and but it was Vital because I had hit this. When we were doing Dark is the Way, I hit this like writer's block that was so horrendous, and I was also just in a bad spot in life in general, and like I just wasn't writing like I was used to writing. And Christian and Nate kind of came to save the day on that record. And, um, when it came time to do Vital, I was in such a better place that I had ended up demoing, I think, something like 47 songs. And so and we still had Christian stuff and Nate stuff in there, and so that record was kind of an amalgamation of all of us, but like it was still this kind of like, oh man, I finally like
Mm.
got all of that out there.
As I was
um,
asking the question, that got me thinking because obviously for a fan, you're just judging the album on how much you like the songs, or
right.
sometimes there's an element of, I guess it is also true that if you're in a certain place, like if that album found you at a certain point in your life, that's also going to be so important. But obviously, if you're a musician, if you're an artist, it very much depends on what you're going through and what the process was like. So, like when we
Yeah.
were talking about Never Take Friendship Personal, there's probably like so many bad memories attached to that album that it's almost like the quality, I don't want to say the quality becomes irrelevant, but you get what I mean. It's like it's hard
Yeah.
to look at that album without remembering what you went through personally making it. And that
Right.
Vital, we're talking about Vital, I love that thing of you had this awful state of writer's block, but you had the the band coming in with their ideas, you sort of
Hmm.
getting through some of the things that you were going through at the time, and then you come out the other end and you've got this great record and you're in a better place. I totally see why you would think that's my favorite record.
Yeah, and it was a blast to make. Like it was just fun. We were all having fun making that record. We went and saw the Avengers for the first time. Like it was just like a good time. And then I think doing Silverline was super fun. You know, it was our first record back, and you know, the first song we'd recorded in like 7 years or something. When we did Two Graves, and those were songs that I demoed like you know probably like 2 3 months earlier. You know, and then when we did Vega, it was a lot of fun. It was really cool to like be back in the studio with everybody and kind of just having fun, like everyone throwing ideas into the pot. And like, it was just very freeing, a very different experience than I think we had ever had before. And then, doing Friendship was a blast. So I think honestly, like depending on where we're at and depending on what's happening, the latest thing that we put out is
Of
usually my
course.
favorite thing.
I feel like we may have touched on this earlier, but as we sort of come to a close now, I'm really curious, is there a particular highlight of the career that you're really proud of? Is there something that when you think about the band, that's like that moment, you're like, I'm so glad we did that.
Oh
And it
man,
could
there's
be
like
anything. It doesn't have to be like a festival, or it could even be nailing a really hard guitar part. I just, what's that one
no,
thing?
I mean there are a million different moments that I could think of, and again, my brain always goes back to the most recent, and um, being on stage at Warped Tour in Long Beach just a couple weeks ago, and like just seeing an ocean of people where I couldn't see where the crowd ended, and people singing along and people having a blast, like that is a new highlight for me. But you have those kind of peppered throughout your career, like I think about the first time we went to New Zealand and the first festival we played, and it was just like the most people I'd ever seen, and like and everyone going crazy. I think we played a show in London where everyone ended up on the stage,
Oh
like
wow.
singing and like grabbing the mic and stuff, and there are all of these little moments like throughout the last 25 years that like you know, make up this like, whole experience that I could not be more thankful for.
I love
So,
that because I feel like what you're touching on is what's been the real highlight for you is the community aspect of being in the band. That you've got all these people, and I think obviously you're talking about the more recent side of it. Like lately, as you've come back and you've come back on your own terms, now you know it's like these people are here because of what we've built,
yeah,
and the fact that and we're now able to sustain that. And obviously, and again, it actually does sound like you've had really good relationships with the different labels, with different management, things like that. And obviously, all of those things play their role. But yeah, again, just to kind of highlight that thing of now you can look back on it. It's like this is the thing that we've built that we could be proud of.
I think being in a band would be absolutely miserable without fans. So,
Exactly.
and also wouldn't happen. So,
I love that mentality, and I think it is like yes, there are certain things you want to do with a band, certain success you might want to attain. But at the end of the day, it's about building those relationships. It's about having those fans and yeah, having that community around you.
yeah, I mean, there are no bands without fans. Christian says that every single show. And if we wouldn't be beating our heads against the wall if we didn't see people every single time we played a show, like we wouldn't be trying to do this. Like we wouldn't be having fun every time we go out on stage. We wouldn't be continuing to put out music, or maybe we would. It would just be a lot sadder. I don't know, but um, like the fact that we can still see all of those faces like every time we walk on stage, like it's the only reason that it's any fun, you know. um, we obviously love each other and we have a blast writing music, but like if you take that one element out of it, then it's not worth it.
Amazing. And so now I guess the question becomes, what what would you like to do next? Like, is there anything you still need to tick off the bucket list, so to speak?
Um, man, I'm terrified of flying.
Oh, really?
Uh, I had someone tell me once that I should get my pilot's license, but
Following the
I don't
footsteps
know.
of Bruce Dickinson from Iron
Yeah,
Maiden.
I don't know, man. Like that seems because you start in the small planes, right? And the small planes are musician
I'd assume
killers.
you start in a small
I
plane.
should
I
not.
don't think they'll stick you in a Boeing, 747 or
Yeah.
something.
Um, I not really, man. Musically, not really. I feel 100% happy with like where we're at, like what we've done. I mean, you're always going to want more. Like you're always going to want to keep it going and keep having fun and keep making music. As of right now, I am very happy with the trajectory that we're on.
Super. Well, that's a good place to be. Amazing. Joey, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I've
Thanks
really
very
enjoyed
much for
doing
having
this.
me, man. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you. All right, mate. Take care.